Let's bring in Eric Mandel, director of the Middle East Political Information Network, a private Middle East research analysis firm. And Eric, previous U.S. administrations have treated the Golan Heights as occupied Syrian territory, which is also, by the way, in line with UN Security Council resolutions. Is President Trump creating a precedent here, or is it not such a big deal? Because given the situation in Syria over the last 8 years, nobody's really expecting Israel to negotiate with Assad over this territory.
Well, I think it is a big deal because this affects international law. The West Bank, for example, is actually, Israel has an easier case to make because it is disputed territory. There never was a stakeholder. Here, Syria was a stakeholder. So Israel, there is an international legal path for Israel to have this because they won this in multiple defensive wars. So this is very serious. It's a real precedent. But obviously the pragmatics of it, Israel's not going to be giving this back. In fact, if we had listened to John Kerry or Martin Indyk, or for that matter, even Dennis Ross, who called this low-hanging fruit, Israel giving it back, all this within the last 10 years, Israel would have had ISIS, Iran, or Hezbollah up in the Golan Heights. So people may have thought if this is going to be given back. There were discussions even 12 years ago. Olmert spoke with Bashar Assad about this. This is something that Israel really needs. There's 20,000 Israelis there. There are 20,000 Syrian Druze, Syrian citizens who have not taken Israeli citizenship. But this is absolutely strategic high ground that Israel is not going to give. And the fact that the president did that is a big win. It's also a big win for Bibi Netanyahu.
But Eric, because Israel has had this territory since 1967 and annexed it in 1981, it doesn't really change anything on the ground, does it? I mean, yes, in terms of diplomacy and how the United States speaks about it and how Israel speaks about it, but as far as control and security, that remains exactly the same, right?
It does, but I really believe laying down the foundations. People are really stuck in 1967 or 1949 armistice lines. I think it is very important to acknowledge that almost all of these areas are artificially created and they're not sacrosanct lines, and that when you acquire territory in a defensive war, that there's a consequence to be paid. And I think there's a strong message here from this administration, and I think will make it easier for future administrations in dealing with the Palestinians who've been intransient about the West Bank or Judea and Samaria.
And Eric, briefly, how do you think the Arab countries are expected to react? Is it going to pass such a recognition relatively in a calm way, calm manner, like we've seen in the case of the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, or not?
I think it's going to be similar. I was in the Gulf last month, and these countries really are kind of fed up, although they won't say it out loud. We're talking about Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, for that matter, I'm sure Saudi Arabia, that they don't really want to be held hostage to the Palestinian intransients, but they've gotten their street incited for so many generations that that it's hard for them to go back. But they'll make some noise, but I don't think they're really going to care. This is not going to lead to anything other than a lot of noise.
Eric Mandel, he's the director of the Middle East Political Information Network and hopefully the owner of one of those lovely yachts there behind him in Florida. Eric, thank you. President.